This is your 91.3 FM 3030 Sports Update. The Miami Heat defeated the San Antonio Spurs 109-93 in Game 4 of the NBA Finals, tying the series at 2-2. LeBron James scored 33 points and Dwayne Wade had 32 points. Wade had to stay after the game.
My teammates needed this game for me, and they needed me to be aggressive, and that's what I did tonight. It was all about getting a win, and it was all about myself, Chris, and LeBron coming out and leading this team to a victory, which we was able to do tonight.
The Heat's Big Three combined for a total of 85 points, while the Spurs' Big Three had 40. Game 5 is on Sunday in San Antonio before the series heads back to Miami for Game 6 and possibly 7. In the AHL, the Blackhawks lead the Bruins 1-0 in the Stanley Cup Finals with Game 2 on Saturday. The Penguins re-signed Evgeny Malkin to an 8-year, $76 million extension. In baseball, the A's sweep the Yankees, winning 3-2 in 18 innings. Orioles beat the Red Sox 5-4 in 13 innings. Blue Jays top the Rangers 3-1. Royals blow out the Rays 10-1. Phillies defeat the Twins 3-2. Cardinals double up the Mets 2-1. Cubs beat the Reds 6-5 in 14 innings. The Giants blanked the Pirates 10-0, and the Nationals beat the Rockies 5-4. Troy Tulowitzki suffered a broken rib and will miss 4 to 6 weeks. I'm AJ Speier, and this has been your 330 Sports Update on 91.3 FM WBNY.
And now, the Sports Reporters Radio Show on WBNY.
Shot clock winding down. Parker in rhythm. 4 for 5. Hamstring looks pretty good here in the opening quarter. Parker with a spin move. Inside to Leonard. Leonard backs it in. Once again, Parker in the paint. And Eric Spoelstra calls timeout. Diaw kicks it out to Parker. Parker's going to have to put it up, flips it up, off the glass and in! Superb move from Tony Parker. Speaking of dominant players, 15 points for Parker, 6 assists, 3 rebounds, playing on a strained hamstring. Green, bad pass, stolen by Wade. Oh, gets in and throws it down. He avoided 2 Spurs after the steal. Ginobili, beautiful pass, but deflected. Another turnover, that's 6 already for the Spurs. James goes to the basket, banks in another. And LeBron James, part of this 8-0 run. Leonard blocked by Miller. Ahead is James. Parker tries to get in front of him, and James adjusts and dunks.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Reporters Radio Show. I'm the host, AJ Speier, joined alongside Aubrey Gibert. The Miami Heat defeated the San Antonio Spurs 109-93 in yesterday's game, Game 4 of the NBA Finals. 2-2 series tie. Game 5 will be on Sunday, 8 o'clock on ABC. Aubrey, what a performance by Dwayne Wade. 32 points, LeBron James, 33 points. Both of them stepped up, answered their critics. And even Chris Bosh, 20 points. The Big Three for the Miami Heat combined for 85 points. It was the first real game we can say that it wasn't all LeBron James.
Yeah, I know this is 3 years later, but virtually this is what they signed up for. This is exactly why they joined and formed the Big Three. And sad to say, even one championship later and one missed one, but that was honestly the best game I've seen from all three, maybe ever. If you look at LeBron James, not too surprised by his points. He was bound to break out one game. He hadn't even notched the 20-point mark the first 3 games, so he's going to come out aggressive last night. He said he's going to come out better than he did last game. Chris Bosh, 8 of 14 from the field, 13 rebounds, 20 points, 4 blocks. He really established himself down low yesterday. It was like, hey, welcome to the paint, Chris Bosh. Would you like to play? So, he played well. And then, obviously, you have to talk about Mr. Flash, Dwayne Wade, who I've always been a fan of. But I haven't seen this Dwayne Wade since 2006. I know everybody's saying that, but if you really look at his play, even when they won last year, he struggled because he had the same knee injury last year in the finals. He was only scoring 15 to 20 points a game. Chris Bosh really stepped up in the finals last year for them. I'll go with LeBron James. But 14 to 25, 6 steals, and he had his jump shot going. Dwayne Wade's always a guy who gets to the rack. Did he go to Germany overnight or something and got the Kobe Bryant knee surgery? Because, he had a lot of pop to it. I understand that, they had to have that game. They were desperate. But to play, virtually for 3 guys to play perfect on the road in the finals, kudos goes out to the Miami Heat last night. Definitely.
Going into Game 4, if Miami Heat lost, the series was over in Game 5 because there's no way San Antonio was going to go back to Miami after that. And you look at what Tony Parker did in the first half. I mean, he had 15 points. You really thought that San Antonio was going to go somewhere. The way they came back toward the end of the half, and Chris Bosh with that stupid dunk when he could have actually took the lead in the halftime. You really thought all the momentum was on San Antonio's side. But then, obviously, Eric Spoelstra said something to him, or LeBron James, or maybe even Juwan Howard like before. Something happened in that locker room for Miami, and they just clicked on fire, and they just came out, and San Antonio couldn't do anything about it. And I noticed there was a certain point in the game, it was 86-81, Miami, and Shane Battier was called with a foul where it should have been a charge call against
I think Splitter coming down the lane.
Yeah. And immediately after, Dwayne Wade took over. And it was just one of those plays where it seemed like Miami was really fed up with what happened, and they just responded to the call, and there was nothing you could do. I mean, they outscored them 23-12 the rest of the game, and it's just crazy. I went into this Game 4 thinking if Tony Parker's healthy, that San Antonio was probably going to win this game. Parker did his thing, and then what happened to him and Tim Duncan in the fourth quarter? They both had 3 shots combined.
Yeah. In that first half, it was Miami obviously dominated that game in the first half, but then San Antonio had that 11-2 run in the second quarter, and it was honestly looking like another Game 1 where Miami played perfect, but San Antonio was still in the game. So I thought, okay, this is another Game 1. Miami put up their best shot, but San Antonio, responded. I was like, so Miami had to come out third and fourth quarter and keep it up, and they did. I mean, and like you said, that time when Dwayne Wade went off, it was while LeBron James was on the bench. That right there told me that game was theirs, when LeBron James can be off on the bench getting rest, and Dwayne Wade picked up the slack, where virtually LeBron James has picked up the first 3 rounds of the playoffs for him. So, I think Dwayne Wade really reminded people of the top 5 player he is when healthy, and the reason why he has 2 rings already going for his third. And as for Tony Parker, I mean, to be held scoreless in the second half really surprised me. I don't know, maybe if the hamstring was a factor. Duncan, I mean, had 20 points, but 10 shots. We were talking about this. That's unacceptable from your big man. Did he have 10 shots?
25 for Wade and LeBron James apiece, and Tim Duncan, who was arguably the most healthiest of your superstars, only has 10 shots. He was shooting 60% from the field. Why do you not give him the ball more? I mean, the biggest weakness for the Miami Heat has been their post presence, and you give them just 10 shots. I don't understand it.
Yeah, especially when Birdman did not even play last night, I don't believe. They made that big lineup change and moving Mike Miller to the starting lineup and
LeBron
moving Udonis Haslem
supposed to be
out.
playing center.
Yeah, and I think that right there really gave San Antonio a bad matchups because, I mean, you can put Chalmers on, you have Parker on Chalmers, and you can do Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard on LeBron and Wade, but for some reason they put Tiago Splitter on Wade, which I thought was very disrespectful to Dwayne Wade. And I think after the first possession, Popovich immediately subbed in Gary Neal for him because I think it just presented such a bad matchup because you can't leave Mike Miller open. So you have to have somebody out there in the three-point range. So that's taking one of your big men out the paint, whether it be Duncan or Green or somebody like that. So I thought that really, even if Miller didn't score, I believe, what did he finish? He finished with, he had no points, but I mean, only took 1 shot. But I think, it's virtually just spacing for him. He spaces the floor for them like a Chris Bosh does. And I think it really allowed Chris Bosh to go down low and really, I thought, dominate.
For Mike Miller, it was basically just a threat. I mean, you look at Game 3, he was 5 of 5 from beyond the arc. You really thought going into this game, I mean, Miller had really been heating up since the Indiana series at the very end. And you would have thought that it'd be another scoring punch that they had to worry about. I mean, I agree with you. I don't understand why you put Tiago Splitter on Dwayne Wade. Maybe it's because of the fact he's a knee injury. You thought maybe he's not going to shoot 3-pointers. He's going to try to drive in, so that's probably why they ended up doing it. But after 1 foul, they ended up going to Gary Neal, and I really thought that was a bad move by Popovich just from the fact that who was their best scorer off the bench? Gary Neal at this point.
Yeah, now I was going to actually bring that up. I mean, that's, along with the Wade in stats, the biggest stat for me from that game is Manu Ginobili, 1 of 5 from the field, five points. I mean, I think he's averaging, he's averaging 7.5 points per game in his finals on 18% shooting from three-point land and 3 assists per game.
Yeah, and
unacceptable.
And in the regular season, he was averaging 11.8 points. He's at 35 years old. He's clearly on the decline at this point, and You really got to wonder if the Spurs are going to end up bringing him back next year. I mean, this past season, he cost them $14.1 million. Look at a guy like Gary Neal. He doesn't even make $1 million. So you have to wonder what their plans are going forward in the future. Obviously, you can't do anything about it now. Manu Ginobili has to step up in Game 5.
Yeah. He's not going to have to step up in Game 5, but he's going to have to step up in Game 6 or 7, especially if Tony Parker is not 100%. Really the biggest weakness to me with San Antonio right now is when Parker gets rest, who's going to be that facilitating guard to get guys open, like Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green. Those aren't guys. While those guys are great shooters, they're not guys that create their own shots. Their shots are created off of Tony Parker's penetration. So if you don't have somebody penetrating, then those guys really are ineffective. I think in games 1 and 2, even Game 3, Parker was really good at getting in the paint, getting Green open, who's shooting a blistering 67% from three-point range. Like Stephen A. said, I have to agree. He's been the MVP of the finals right now recently. He's only averaging 16.5 points per game, but he's been very consistent. He's shooting 57% from the field overall. I think he's hit 20. I think he's hit like 19 to 28 threes. That's just a blistering count. But at the same time, he has to get open to get there. I think that's where Parker comes in, and I think that's where Ginobili has to step up in, not necessarily scoring, because obviously his scoring touch is off, but creating for other guys, because they don't really have that backup point guard. Because Gary Neal, the way he's shooting right now, you don't want him to be sacrificing. You want him to shoot. That one shot, I think at LeBron, it seemed like he shot from half court. So, in order for everybody else to be effective, you need another guy off the bench that can facilitate.
And the thing is with Gary Neal, he's a different type of point guard than Tony Parker. He's more of a shooter, more of a Russell Westbrook kind in a way. You saw with the big game he had in Game 3 with the 27 points, how he was able to shoot all those threes. He's more of that kind of point guard. He's not the kind of guy who's going to drive in and dish it out like Tony Parker. So it changes the whole scheme of things. And if they wanted to go with the other point guard, Corey Joseph, who only had 9 minutes in this game, he's really inexperienced. You really don't want to put him under that kind of pressure, especially against the Miami Heat, because the whole reason why they've had success this season has been their transition offense. And as you saw in this game, 18 turnovers for the Spurs, and once again, Miami victorious.
23 points off of turnovers for the Miami Heat. And,
it was only 8 points in this game.
Was it? Well, the point is, if there's one thing you know about Miami, if you're going to beat Miami, one thing you have to do, 1A, like this has to be the number one thing, is you cannot turn the ball over, because they're so athletic. They thrive in getting out in open court. So 18 turnovers right there, it tells you you're not going to beat Miami. You're only going to beat Miami. You have to be in, honestly, it has to be 10 or under to beat Miami, unless you're just going to shoot blistering from the field, which they did last game, but they also did not turn the ball over 18 times.
They turned over 14 in that game. But yeah, the thing is, with the other game, they out-rebounded them. They shot well from three-point range, and those are a great combination of what it takes to win against the Miami Heat. Surprisingly, in this game, Miami Heat were 0 for 3 from the three-point range in just the first half, so they were really establishing themselves more in the paint, and ended up working to their benefactor. But then you look at the second half, and it's just Tony Parker is just not the same person. I don't know if it was his hamstring started to act up or wherever it was, but this was a different Spurs team that came out of the locker room, and Miami just went to work, especially in that fourth quarter.
Even Ray Allen, 15 points from him. You're getting 15, 32, 33, 20 from 4 guys. That will be enough in this
points.
NBA game to win with those kind of stats.
That's
especially
points.
how efficient it was. What was it? 14 to 25, I think, from Wade, 15 to 25 from LeBron, and 8 to 14 from Bosh. That's not only scoring, that's efficient.
And Ray Allen was 5 of 10.
That's efficient.
I agree with you, but the thing is, you mentioned Danny Green being the MVP. I don't think he's quite there yet. Obviously, when you're not the focus of the Miami Heat's defense, you're going to hit shots when you're open, and he has a lot of open shots too. He only got 10 points in this game, and I'm not really willing to name him MVP. I would probably name Tony Parker the MVP, because we've seen what the Spurs are capable of when he's on his game and when he's not. So if I had to go with the MVP discussion just for that conversation, it'd either be LeBron James or Tony Parker, because neither team could win without that superstar. But with Danny Green, he's an up-and-coming player. It's kind of like what we saw with Indiana and Paul George, how he wasn't quite a superstar yet, but now he's becoming a household name, and what he does next season will determine whether or not he's a superstar. Same thing with Danny Green, especially with Ginobili now struggling. A lot more pressures on Danny Green. He might actually be the third person of this big three team.
Yeah. People were talking about it on ESPN before, but even if you keep bringing Ginobili back next year, this team is not going to be together for another year or two. I mean, everybody is getting up there in age. The only person that's really young, and he's a old. Parker's an old. I think 29. He's been in the league for a long time. So 31. Wow. But he's been in the league, I think, since he was about 21. So he's been in the league for a good 10, 11 years. So I think Danny Green is going to be more of a focal point of the offense coming up in the next couple of seasons. I don't think he's going to be a couple of superstar, because I think the number one thing with a superstar is you have to be able to create for yourself, and he's not at that level where he can create for himself. Maybe because he doesn't have to, because of the team he's on. I mean, maybe you never know if he goes to a team where there's nobody else, he might, but I don't see him as that kind of guy. I don't see him as big enough to be that dominant. But I see him as a second-tier guy, a guy that, you can get 15 to 20 points out of a game on a regular night, can shoot from long range, as we can see. I think he needs to just work on, ball handling and looking at creating his own shot off the dribble, because Miami is pretty much blitzing him at the three-point line, and they're forcing him to put the ball on the ground.
I mean, his only points really come off three-pointers. I mean, he occasionally gets to the line and shoot free throws, but there's nobody guarding you, obviously, then. He has to obviously work on his inside game and work on driving to the hoop. But, I mean, he's still young. He's had quite a journey, by the way, coming to his career. I mean, obviously, you know about him because you're a huge UNC fan. He started out his career with the Cleveland Cavaliers, was waived there, waived twice by the San Antonio Spurs, went to the NBA D-League, and then when there was a lockout, he went to Slovenia. And then he came back here and had his breakout season last year. Now he's making $3.5 million, and he's on his way to becoming a superstar. He's just not there yet. I need to see more from him. He needs to average at least around probably 17, 18 points a game.
Yeah, agreed. So obviously moving on, now we have 3 games left, 2 in Miami.
I just wanted to bring up one other point before we go to that. I didn't like the fact that the San Antonio Spurs cut Steven Jackson. And you really notice how much of an impact that was in the series now that Manu Ginobili's struggling. They bring in a guy like Tracy McGrady, who doesn't know the system that well, and he only comes out on the court when the game's a blowout for either team. So I don't understand that move, and I really feel like Steven Jackson could give them that three-point range touch they really need, another guy who can get to the hoop. I just don't understand why they ended up cutting him.
Yeah. Also, along with his three-point shooting, I think he brings that nasty grit to the San Antonio Spurs, that guy that you can't push around. I think it would have been perfect for him, especially, he could have defended LeBron James at times, Dwayne Wade at times, and frustrate him at the same time. That would take pressure off of Kawhi Leonard, who I think has had a pretty good finals in my standpoint. But I think it would take pressure off of Kawhi Leonard, and he gives you that long range, so he gives you that spacing on the floor. I can't at this point in his career, as much as I might not like it, I really can't question Greg Popovich and what he does. I mean, his credentials speak for themselves. You can't really question what he does. I mean, this guy, honestly, if there was no Phil Jackson, might be the best coach, one of the top 3 coaches ever to coach the game of basketball. I think he has 5 rings or 4 rings going for his 5th. So, I mean, he seems to know to push the right buttons. Everybody always talks about his, post-game interviews and everything like that. But whatever he's saying to his team, it's working. So, maybe it wasn't. Maybe they were not meshing together, or maybe the chemistry was off. But Popovich seen something that we didn't see, and while I might not like it, obviously he thought it was best for his team.
When I look at these stats, I mean, obviously there's 50 points in the paint for the Miami Heat, but when you look at LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, there's a combined 2 3-pointers attempted out of those 50 shots they took, which means they're mostly in the paint with layups, dunks, or mid-range jumpers. And by taking out Thiago Splitter, you lost your presence down low, and you saw LeBron James and Dwayne Wade able to take advantage of that. They were able to take a lot of fadeaway jumpers, step-back jumpers, and you saw players like Kawhi Leonard and Tim Duncan playing back a little bit more and giving them more space in order to shoot that shot with less contested shots. And I really feel like that was because Thiago Splitter wasn't in the game. Obviously, he's not much of an offensive threat, but you lose that presence in the paint. I feel like they lost their confidence as far as defense, and that's why they were to take over in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. I mean, when you really look at LeBron James and Dwayne Wade's game, that's their bread and butter, is getting into the paint. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, I've come out and said this numerous amount of times. They're virtually the same player. They're both not great jump shooters. They're respectable jump shooters, but especially from three-point range, they're not even great. They're not great from three-point range. LeBron has improved his game. Dwayne Wade has no three-point game whatsoever. I think he made like 2 or 3 all season. That's something where he maybe would like to improve in this, maybe this offseason. But so I think when you look at trying to defend LeBron James or Dwayne Wade, you usually sag off, because you're looking because you're looking for them to shoot the jump shot, and that's what the Spurs have been doing and packing the lane with LeBron. But like you said, with Splitter out, LeBron, you could just tell, was way more aggressive last night than he's been in the first 3 games. I think that he knew. I mean, there was a desperation last night, and he just really established himself down low in the paint. He posted up a couple times, which I've been saying he should be doing every single time down the floor. And I feel as though Dwayne Wade getting into the lane and getting free throws and getting out in transition really opened the game up for the Heat, because I mean, even though they played perfect throughout the first half and everything, the Spurs were right there. But I think those turnovers is really what hurt the Spurs. And I think LeBron James was coming out. I think he went 5 or 6 in the first quarter. And I think a couple of those were jump shots. So I think he really came out focused. It was like he was in Game 6 last year in Boston, not 45 points, but you could tell they were locked and loaded last night. And it's to the point where I'm not sure they can even give that effort on Sunday, because they put so much into that game. I mean, they have 2 days off, but can they sustain that effort?
I mean, it's the same thing we saw with San Antonio in Game 3. I mean, we all knew they weren't going to shoot that many threes and make it again. I mean, they shot 50%. It was just 8 of 16, and they really couldn't do anything else. But when it came down to the fourth quarter, 5 of 15 from the field, and I mentioned only 3 shots combined for Parker and Tim Duncan, your 2 superstars, and you look at what happened with Miami, is you got to do a better job of figuring out who's going to get the ball in that area. But when I look over at how they were defending LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, as I mentioned, with Thiago Splitter being out, you had Tim Duncan, who has been guarding Chris Bosh in the series, and then you have Kawhi Leonard, who's guarding LeBron James. He now has to basically act like a power forward and man the paint and try to check LeBron James, who can spot up jump. He can even shoot 3-pointers. He can do it all, and I really felt like that really affected Kawhi Leonard's game because of that matchup. And I like, even though Mike Miller didn't have really much of an effect in this game, I like the fact that he was starting over Ray Allen, because as I mentioned with San Antonio, when you took out Gary Neal, they didn't have any scoring fire off the bench. There was no energy off that bench. With Ray Allen, he creates energy. He had 14 points in this game, so it was a big game for the team all around for Miami. And going into Game 5, I mean, it's a home game for San Antonio. You have to figure they're probably going to win this game, because you don't want to go back into Miami down 3-2 and have to win out both games in Miami. It's just not going to happen. So I got a feeling that San Antonio is really going to come out to play in this game. I feel like Tony Parker, the extra day of rest he's going to have now, is really going to help him. I expect him to have at least a double-double, 20 points, 10 assists, whatever you want to call it. Duncan has to step up his game, and I'm going to make a bold prediction that says Manu Ginobili scores at least 15 points.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can agree that Game 5 is a must-win for San Antonio. I mean, you have to win that game. You don't want to go back to Miami having to win 2 games to go to the finals. With Miami knows what's at stake if that happens. Before the series started, I picked San Antonio in 6, and but I also said there was a big asterisk next to that, because I felt as though my prediction was based off of Dwayne Wade not playing up to Dwayne Wade's level. If Dwayne Wade, if last night was any sign of him being back, San Antonio has no chance. I mean, San Antonio's a great team. We've talked about them. I've raved about them. But if Dwayne Wade plays like he did last night, the Flash Dwayne Wade at 06, then San Antonio's not beating Miami. Even if San Antonio wins tomorrow, if Wade plays like the 06 Wade I know, they're not beating them. I mean, you're talking about 2 of the top 5 players in the league right there in Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. And if they can sustain that effort, I don't see San Antonio beating them, because you can throw all X's and O's and out. Who can score? Dwayne Wade and LeBron James are going to get to the line at will. If Dwayne Wade is even close to what he is, it takes pressure off of LeBron James to also be able to facilitate, get guys open like Mike Miller, Ray Allen. And I think it really helps out Chris Bosh as well, because it takes pressure off of him to have to necessarily, he could pick and choose his spots. He's been kind of lost in the offense. He doesn't know if he should, he's really been getting away from three-point land and getting back into that mid-range game where I thought that was his bread and butter all his career. And I just really think that if Dwayne Wade, if that's what we've seen last night, then I think Miami wins the series. But if he goes back to what he was before, then I'll stick with San Antonio. But like I said, like Dwayne Wade said, see you Sunday. We don't know.
Well, the thing is, it's all about motivation. And when the media starts calling out players saying, I don't know if he still got it, it's the big one, not the big three. It's really gonna get to players like Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, where they have to step up or else continue to hear the criticism. And now that the criticism is off of him, you look at it now, it's on Manu Ginobili. So he's the next guy who has to step up now. Also, Tony Parker step up because he didn't show up in the second half. So I really think that San Antonio is probably going to win this game in Game 5. And then, obviously, since for the last 2 series, Miami has yet to have a team win 2 straight games. So you have to figure it's probably going to go San Antonio Game 5, Miami Game 6, and then I don't know who to predict for Game 7 because it's a Game 7.
Yeah, it's tough because, you usually would go with the home team, but San Antonio is such a veteran team that I don't think it matters where they play because the brand of basketball they play, it's not a brand of basketball where, you're better at home or you're better on the road. Because, let's be honest, they played both their Game 1 and 2 on the road, they played better than they did last night because I feel as though, is it based off of, Tony Parker's health? Is it based off of they were more focused? You really don't know, but the way they play the game of basketball, it's a team effort with them. So it doesn't matter if they play on the road or at home.
This was the first game where you can actually say Eric Spoelstra out-coached Greg Popovich. He didn't use 2 traditional big men the entire game. In the first 3 games, he used 2 big men 35% of the time through games 1 through 3. Udonis Haslem played 10 minutes off the bench. Chris Anderson didn't play at all. Ray Allen logged a postseason high at 33 minutes. So with the fact of that, if San Antonio goes with Thiago Splitter out in the court, they have more shooters out there, and it's harder to defend them. If they decide to go more athletic, the paint opens up. So I feel like Miami has the advantage in that area, and I know I picked San Antonio to win in 6 games, but I'm going to have to go back on that prediction now, and I'm going to say Miami wins in 7.
Oh, good old renege. Okay. Yeah, I think, with that lineup change with Mike Miller starting now, I think Greg Popovich has to make an adjustment. Does he go with Gary Neal in the starting lineup? Does he go with Emmanuel Ginobili in the starting lineup? I think he has to insert a guard because really with that, LeBron, Mike Miller and Chris Bosh, either way it goes, you're gonna if you put Thiago Splitter in a starting lineup, well, who does he guard? Does he guard Mike Miller? Does he guard Chris Bosh? Then who does Duncan check? It makes a mismatch for one of those 2 big men when you have 4 guards virtually on the court for Miami, and then you have 2 big men on the court for San Antonio.
Well, Boris Diaw actually had to start in the second half coming out of the locker room, and they were actually a +3 with him on the court. He only played 11 minutes, though, because he's not a natural center. I just found it was interesting how they didn't go back to him in the fourth quarter when he could. He's a guy who's not a natural center. He's a guy who's played small forward, power forward most of his career. But he's a guy who's athletic enough to guard Chris Bosh and let Duncan possibly cover LeBron James if he comes into the paint or whoever else he has to guard, maybe Mike Miller or whatever. I feel like Tim Duncan could at least do a better job of handling Mike Miller on the side because Mike Miller's not the kind of guy who slashes into the court, so he can just defend him if he wants to shoot threes. I like the matchup with Boris Diaw on the court, and I look for San Antonio to start Diaw going forward.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. So that's a good point. I think he came in that second quarter at the end. I think that's when they made that 11-2 run. He came in, hit a big 3. I think he had a big post up later on in that game. So I think that it was a different parameter for them. I think he played Dwayne Wade a couple times down the court on defense. So it's interesting to see what Greg Popovich is going to do. I expect a big adjustment, and I expect an adjustment to be made to Dwayne Wade. Now that is he back? Is he not back? We don't know. But I expect Greg Popovich to make adjustments, and I expect San Antonio to win Game 5 and to win 1 of 2 in Miami, just like Dallas Mavericks did in 2 years ago.
I just don't see. I think San Antonio's going to win, or San Antonio's going to lose this series. I think they will win Game 5 because they will make the adjustment with DL. But from what I've seen from Spoelstra, this is the year where he becomes an elite coach in the NBA. I know he has 3 of the top 15 players, like you always say, and it's not really fair.
Not anymore. I don't put Chris Bosh in the top 15 anymore. I've been convinced out of it now.
Top 25 at least?
I'll go with that.
All right.
So but there's still 3 out of top 25. What other team has that? So I agree.
Well, one could argue that at one point San Antonio did, but not anymore with Manu Ginobili. But yeah, I'd have to agree. But it's just, like I said, I think Boris Diaw is going to get the start in Game 5 at center, and I think they'll figure him out at home. But then I think Miami takes it away when they get back to Miami in South Beach.
But when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about another team who has championship experience, New England Patriots. They signed Tim Tebow this past week. I have a cut from Stephen A. Smith about Tim Tebow to lead into the intro for our second half.
Hi, I'm WBNY Sports Director Sam Mines, and I'm in charge of the new Buffalo Blitz. Every Monday from 5 to 7 on All Talk Monday on WBNY, myself, Mike Straw, and Nick Stutzman take you through the weekend that was in the world of sports. We'll cover everything in Buffalo from the Bills and Sabres and, of course, all of your Buffalo State athletics and much more. That's the Buffalo Blitz, 5 to 7 p.m. on All Talk Monday on WBNY.
The thought of my sons growing up without me inspired me to quit smoking.
I talked to my doctors, and then I threw away all my cigarettes, ashtrays, and lighters.
I started exercising instead of smoking.
Staying away from alcohol when I was first quitting was key.
I kept on trying, learned something each time.
Do whatever it takes.
No matter how many times it takes.
We did it, so can you.
For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and CDC.
Sports Replay, located on 1614 Niagara Falls Boulevard in Tonawanda, buys, sells, and repairs new and used sporting goods since 1999. They specialize in hockey, snowboards, skiing, paintball, airsoft, and much, much more. Call in at 716-834-6595. Also on Facebook. Once again, Sports Replay at 1614 Niagara Falls Boulevard, a quarter mile off the 290.
This is your 91.3 FM 3030 Sports Update.
After missing time in OTAs, it was revealed that wide receiver Stevie Johnson fractured his back while filming a workout session for the Bills. Johnson has recovered and has returned to the field since. The Bills finished up their last session OTAs this week and will now be off before returning to training camp July 28th. Safety Darius Byrd has not signed his tender, leaving his presence in limbo. In the NBA, the Miami Heat responded after the drubbing in Game 3, defeating the San Antonio Spurs 109-93 to tie the series up at 2 apiece. Dwayne Wade finished with 32 points and 6 steals for the Heat. In the coaching carousel, 10 days after retiring, former Knick Jason Kidd was named the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Kidd becomes just the third player in NBA history to debut as a coach immediately after retiring. Kidd has asked his former head coach Lawrence Frank to join his staff as an assistant. Sources close to the situation say that Doc Rivers and the Los Angeles Clippers have mutual interest, while former Nuggets coach George Karl will interview with the Clippers and the Memphis Grizzlies early next week. In hockey, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals will be played tomorrow night as the Chicago Blackhawks look to take a 2-0 lead over the Boston Bruins after winning in 3 overtimes Wednesday night. The puck will drop at 8 p.m. Staying in the NHL, the Pittsburgh Penguins re-signed some of their own talent, re-signing Evgeny Malkin to an 8-year, $76 million deal, keeping him and Crosby in the Steel City for the next decade. In baseball, Yankees shortstop Derek Jeter has been medically cleared to participate in all baseball activity. Jeter is not expected back until after the All-Star break, while Rockies shortstop Troy Tulowitzki will be out 4 to 6 weeks after MRI revealed he has a broken rib. This is Aubrey Gibert, and this has been your 3030 Sports Update here on 91.3 FM WBNY.
And now, the Sports Reporters Radio Show on WBNY.
I couldn't be happier. You know why, Skip? Because you're missing the boat. Tim Tebow in New England eradicates all the talk, the chitter-chat, and all of this other stuff about him being a quarterback, because we know he ain't playing before Tom Brady. So there's no quarterback controversy. There's no having to worry and lament how many snaps he's getting or not getting. There's no wondering, when are you going to put Tim Tebow in? I mean, my God, you guys are not winning any games. Oh, no, none of that. Because we're talking about the New England Patriots here. They're going to win a minimum of 10 games, and we all know it's probably 12 to 13 per season. They're money in the bank because they have Tom Brady.
And welcome back to the Sports Reporters Radio Show. I'm the host, AJ Speier, alongside Aubrey Gibert. That was Stephen A. Smith with his thoughts on the Tim Tebow signing. Obviously, Skip Bayless and his fascination of Tim Tebow continues. Skip Bayless made some bold predictions on the First Take show, saying that he thinks that when Tom Brady retires, Tim Tebow could potentially be the starter.
Is that right now?
It's not right now.
So then why are we talking about it? That's how I feel.
That's how I feel. I don't understand why the media is making a big deal about us. I mean, right now he's currently a third-string quarterback because while he was 8-5 that one year that everyone likes to talk about, he completed 46.5% of his passes. Any other quarterback, you don't talk about him, but because this is a player who's had his career followed since high school, college. He won the Heisman there. By the way, I don't really understand why everyone makes a big deal about him winning the Heisman. Ken Dorsey won the Heisman. What happened to him in his NFL career? Nothing. So, I mean, he was 8-5. He's got the clutch gene. He understands what it takes in order to win. He's got the leadership you want, but he doesn't know how to throw yet. And I really feel behind a guy like Tom Brady, he's going to learn how to become an actual quarterback. I don't know if he can work on his throwing mechanics yet because Josh McDaniels was his head coach back when he was drafted with Denver, so you don't know exactly how he's going to progress going forward. I expect him to become a better than a 50% completion passer going forward, but he's not going to be a starter with Tom Brady unless he gets hurt. And with Ryan Mallett, you don't know how highly New England values him because last year he was 1 for 4 and threw an interception. There's been talks that they were trying to trade Ryan Mallett at the trade deadline, or not the trade deadline, the draft, and it's just a matter of, do you put Tim Tebow above Ryan Mallett on the roster right now?
If you're asking me, I'd say no. You're talking about two total opposite quarterbacks. You're talking about one in Tebow who has no arm. You're talking about a guy Ryan Mallett who has a.
No, Tebow has an arm because he threw that deep pass. He just doesn't.
There's no accuracy though. There's no accuracy. But if you look at Ryan Mallett, he could throw. That was the biggest positive with him coming out of college was that he had an NFL arm. I mean, they're both relatively both the same size. Obviously, Tebow has more mobility. Ryan Mallett has virtually no mobility. So, like I said, it's two total opposite quarterbacks. But if you're talking about in terms of the New England system, based off of how you surround yourself around Tom Brady, Ryan Mallett is a better backup quarterback because Ryan Mallett is similar to Tom Brady, not much mobility. And the offense is predicated around Brady getting the ball out of his hands. So, it's better suited for Ryan Mallett. But also, at the same time, if you're getting the ball quick, Tim Tebow is effective in the short to intermediate passing game, not the long passing game, depending on his mechanics and everything, which need to be worked on. Obviously,
he takes too long to release the ball.
Yeah, that's why I think it could be a problem too if you're trying to get the ball quick. His arm extension, I think it takes too long for him to get the ball out. Josh McDaniels, who was the offensive coordinator for the Patriots, drafted him originally, but really had no success with Josh McDaniels. That success he had was with Mike McCoy and John Fox when they were in Denver. So I don't think much of it. I think maybe in the future, maybe if they work with him after a couple of years, he can maybe do something. I know like Aaron Rodgers, but I think Aaron Rodgers had way more polish and had more of a natural arm than Tim Tebow does. Like you said, he does have leadership ability. He has those intangibles. He has that it factor. He just doesn't have that physical ability to really succeed, I think, in the NFL level on a consistent basis year after year. He has some success, but I don't think he can, you can't run that kind of offense forever because the NFL picks up on things and they look to stop it. Just like the Wildcat. It was there for a little while. It's gone now.
And the thing with Josh McDaniels is when he was the head coach in Denver, Tebow never started. He was 3-9 as a coach, and then he was fired because of an incident where one of his video crew members was videotaping the practices for the San Francisco 49ers, and there was a scandal because of that. The NFL started to investigate, and because of the fact that they had lost Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall because they didn't get along with McDaniels, the Broncos said enough is enough. They got rid of him. 2 games later, Tebow ends up starting for 3 games, and then they go back to Orton the following year, and then Tebow goes on that 8-5 run, and then they trade him. But McDaniels had a plan when he drafted him, obviously, in the first round. He knew he had the potential to become a good quarterback, but he had some learning to do first, and I really don't feel like he got that under John Fox, and obviously the Jets mistreated him, so he still has some growing pains going forward, obviously, and I feel like learning behind arguably the best quarterback of all time. You could say whatever you want. Maybe it's Peyton Manning, Dan Marino, or Brett Favre. I wouldn't even put Brett Favre in that category.
Joe Montana?
Joe Montana probably, or Steve Young. But any of those guys, with Tim Tebow, it's just he has to wait. He has to understand what it's like to become a quarterback. And with the current system in place in New England, he's going to have to learn footwork as well because what we saw with the Buffalo Bills with Ryan Fitzpatrick, it was more of a 3-step drop and get it out, throw slants, hitches, and all that. And you look over at the New England offense now, they really don't have the same kind of weapons they used to have. When you are talking about Michael Jenkins possibly starting or Donald Jones as your number 2 receiver, obviously they've regressed. And you have Rob Gronkowski. You don't know his health going into the season. You have Aaron Hernandez and all that. He's not going to have the weapons he did in Denver either because, I mean, he had Demaryius Thomas, who was able to throw the ball down the field to. Currently, their best receiver is Danny Amendola, a guy who has not really been healthy much of his career, and he's more of a slot receiver. So I think Tom Brady at 36 years old, he's probably going to end up playing till at least 40, 41 years old. I don't see Tim Tebow lasting his entire career with the Patriots. He only signed a 2-year contract. It's not guaranteed. They can cut him before the regular season even starts. What I want to see from Tim Tebow is a strong training camp. I want to see him be productive during preseason, and then I want the media to tell me whether or not he has a future in this league. Not beforehand. I don't care right now. Right now, he's a third-string quarterback fighting for a second-string job, and we can't even talk to Bill Belichick about it. We can't even talk to Tim Tebow about it because apparently there's this rule in the NFL where you're only allowed to talk to 2 players for 1 week if they really want to take it to that level. A team could do that.
Yeah. Maybe they might take the extra step and get him on the field for some wildcat plays or something like that. Maybe Josh McDaniels, puts up a little package for Tim Tebow to come in the game. I really think they are going to use him in that kind of role because I don't see them bringing in a guy who generates so much media and so much attention for somebody to be a backup quarterback. I think that Josh McDaniels sold Belichick on a plan of how to use Tebow. Maybe it could be just a total distraction, like it was in New York, where clearly he was not going to be able to compete for the starting job and was told he was. But
they've had Randy Moss, Chad Ochocinco, Corey Dillon come in there, and yet they're still able to have some success, and they're able to get rid of all the media that came along with it. I think they'll be fine with the Tim Tebow thing.
Yeah, but I think, in terms of how Bill Belichick deals with the media and Rex Ryan deals with the media, is 2 different things. Belichick is virtually like a Greg Popovich in terms of interviews. He just says a couple things, but you see those guys are the best guys when it comes to their profession and what they do. So I don't think it's gonna be that great. I don't think there'll be that much of a distraction like it was in New York. New York obviously is a bigger market than Boston, but I think he's gonna play some kind of role. What that role is at the moment, I cannot tell you, but I think he's being brought in for more than just a backup role. Is it a game changer? I wouldn't say that, but I think it's just a wait-and-see process right now.
Skip mentioned on his TV show, I don't know if he's just doing this to get ratings or not, that they might use him on 2-point conversions because when it comes to 2 yards, obviously the fact that he can run, he can pass it, it's not really that hard of a throw to make a 2-yard pass. Anywhere from 2 to 12 because the end zone is 10 yards deep. I really feel like Tim Tebow could have success in that area, and knowing Bill Belichick, the way he likes to run up the score, it wouldn't go against his thought process to possibly go for 2. I just don't know if you want to put Tim Tebow in that area. I've also heard reports that they might put him at tight end, they might put him at fullback, running back. Well, I want to talk about the fullback position because I really don't understand why there's so much emphasis on putting Tebow there. Teams really don't run the ball anymore. And Vonta Leach, who's currently a free agent, was just released from the Baltimore Ravens because he was making like $4.3 million. He's finding it out right now. I mean, apparently there's 7 teams interested in him, but they're not going to offer him the kind of money he wants. It's turned into a passing league. You have to be able to pass the ball. And that's why it was the most curious decision to me why the Baltimore Ravens, they ended up trading away Anquan Bolden to the San Francisco 49ers. Jacoby Jones, other than the one play he had against the Denver Broncos on Raheem Moore to win that game in the AFC Conference Championship, he really didn't do anything. So I was kind of curious to see why the Baltimore Ravens did that. Brandon Lloyd's a possibility for them to sign going forward in the future, but the fullback position has died, in my opinion. And that's why the Bills got rid of Corey McIntyre, and they don't have a fullback yet.
Yeah, I think the fullback position is virtually inexistable at this point in the NFL. I mean, a few teams do use them. Some teams don't even use the fullback. I mean, for what the fullback used to be, that role, even if you do have one, is not even existent anymore. The fullback was originally used to block for the running back besides the offensive line. Guys like Larry Centers, guys like that who are really good at that position.
They would lead the way to get to that hole.
But, I mean, you really don't see that as much. It's more of an H-back role now where, those guys are going out for passes. So it's really not – it has nothing to do with the running game. Vontae Leach is a great fullback. I thought Corey McIntyre was a great fullback. But like you said, with the day and age we are in now, it doesn't. The demand for a fullback is non-existent. Therefore, why are you paying $4.4 million for him? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you don't quite see as many 1,500 yard rushers as you used to. But with the last 2 teams he's been with Arian Foster, he's been with Ray Rice. Both running backs have had great success in this league. I'm not saying it's only because of Vontae Leach, but it certainly helped. You had a fullback like that. But, I mean, you look at the Buffalo Bills and their situation, I'd personally rather have Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller on the field than C.J. Spiller and Corey McIntyre. And you kind of see it. Back then in the 60s, 70s, 80s, when there was more running involved, there wasn't as many athletic guys out there. It was more of a physical game. And now with all the new kind of medical stuff you can do, and obviously if you want to call it Gatorade, if you want to say that helps too. I just really feel like it's become more of an athletic game, and that's why you see more passing. That's why you see less fullback in there. I mean, the Patriots, they had some success running the ball this past year with Stephon Ridley, but that was because they did HB draws. They found a way to fool the defense, and that's how he was able to get through the hole.
Yeah, I think that the non-existence of the fullback is simply for the fact that you take off a fullback, you open up a spot for a receiver, because a lot of teams are moving to that spread offense where you're spreading the ball out and you're putting more receivers on the field and taking away, which is the fullback or running back, something like that. And I think that's where, virtually that's where the position became non-existent. It was when the offenses opened up their playbook and put more receivers on the field, and that's putting more emphasis on cornerbacks. The passing league has really changed a lot of positions. It's taken away the fullback position.
It's changed the running back position completely because now you can't just run the ball. Look at people like LeGarrette Blount and Beanie Wells. They're struggling to find jobs because, obviously you can't just run the ball. You have to be able to catch it now. You have to be able to get involved in the screen game, or if they want to dump it off.
You can't be a one-trick point at this point as a running back. And I think it puts a premium on defensive backs. You can never have too many defensive backs. Now with these, offenses, when the Bills, with Changeli, they're doing 4 or 5 receiver sets. So, you have to put at least 4 cornerbacks out on the field. So put the premium on the defensive backs.
Linebackers have to be
versatility.
Linebackers have to be more athletic. You saw the Bills. They signed Manny Lawson. They ended up trading with Indianapolis.
They traded Kelvin Shepard.
Yeah, to get Jerry Hughes. And you see why, because it's becoming more of an athletic game. And I don't know if it's analytics that told the Bills to go after those kind of players or not, but you definitely can see a shift in the game because players like Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez, Jimmy Graham, even the tight end position has emerged. It's no longer just a blocking position. You'll be able to catch the ball, and you see what happens when you have that kind of player.
Yeah. There's teams that run 2 tight end formations, have one for blocking purposes and one for catching, or you could be like the Patriots and have 2 catching ones. So I think it just, really wiped out the fullback position based off of how much teams are passing and how much more they want to spread the field out to give their running backs more space, because if you're putting more receivers on the field, it forces defenses not to put so many people in the box. So I think it's kind of a blocking mechanism, because while maybe the receiver isn't blocking, it keeps that extra person in the box to pressure the box and make, so it's really non-existent. Vontae Leach, he may find a job somewhere else for a team that might use him, and maybe in the special teams, something like that. But 7
teams apparently are after him.
Yeah, he's a great fullback. I think you can find a role for him somewhere, even if it's not the fullback position.
It's just with that position, like I said, it's becoming more athletic. And a player like James Casey really cashed in this offseason. He's a guy who was a former tight end who can play fullback too. He did it for Houston this past season. They obviously had some big success with Arian Foster. Now he finds himself in Philadelphia with that Chip Kelly offense. You have Michael Vick there. You have LaShawn McCoy. Plenty of speed in that team. And you have a guy now who's versatile to play fullback or tight end. Match him up with Brent Steelick. I really like what's going forward with the Philadelphia Eagles at least. And their biggest question mark now is who their quarterback's going to be. Is it going to be Michael Vick? Is it going to be Matt Barkley? What are your thoughts on that quarterback debate?
I think Michael Vick is going to be the starter. Will he be the starter for the whole season? That's the biggest question. Michael Vick has had a history of not being able to stay healthy. I think for that offense, though, he is the best guy for the job. You're talking about a guy who's mobile, a guy who can get out of the pocket, a guy who has a strong arm, a guy who's accurate. I don't think he's a long-term answer whatsoever. There was rumors. We had a guest on from Philadelphia, who said that the Eagles were seriously, thinking about getting Geno Smith. all the way at 4. Obviously, he dropped to the second round.
You mentioned E.J. Manuel's his backup plan.
Yeah, E.J. Manuel. So obviously, they're I think it's a stopgap plan for the Eagles to start Michael Vick. I don't think that Nick Foles really has a chance. I think he had a chance, but I think with the drafting of Matt Barkley, maybe because he went lower than people expected, I think that it really said more to Nick Foles than Michael Vick, because Nick Foles is still young. Obviously, he was only a rookie last season. Doesn't really fit that Chip Kelly offense, but I mean, he's come out and said that it might not necessarily be the same as in college. So I think, based off of what we know of Chip Kelly, Michael Vick is the best answer. But if it's not the same offense, then maybe you throw a Matt Barkley or something like that in later on in the season if they're out of the playoffs. But I think, no doubt, Michael Vick should be the starter from day one, despite what the offense might consist of.
Yeah, because Matt Barkley had a lot of question marks. Obviously, he probably would have been a first-round pick.
Especially with the offensive line.
He probably would have been a first-round pick. If he hadn't waited another year in college, he probably would have been a first-round draft pick last year. But, I mean, obviously we saw the growing pains with him. He's going to take a little bit longer to understand the game, at the NFL level at least, with Michael Vick currently starting. I like the fact that they added James Casey. It really, because now they have another guy who they can dump it off to in the backfield. It's not just going to be LaShawn McCoy. I mean, last year there's a reason why McCoy got hurt and Bryce Brown had to come into the game eventually. Now they signed Felix Jones, so they're looking at a lot of athletic backs back there to really help out. They have a much better line now, because I believe they had 3 or 4 starters out during the season.
Peters is back.
Peters is back. Jason Kelsey, the center, is back. I want to say Todd Harriman was injured last year. I'm not positive. Mike McGlynn also. So they're going to have a much healthier line, different offensive system. The only question now is how they're going to look with that 3-4. As I mentioned, it's becoming more of an athletic league. They have Trent Cole, who's been a 4-3 defensive end most of his career. Now he's being told to go 3-4 outside linebacker.
Same thing with Brandon Graham.
I'm going to make a bold prediction that he gets cut for opening day.
Ooh, Trent Cole?
Yes.
Ooh. I'm not going to go that far. I mean, you're talking about a guy who gets double-digit sacks. He averages for his career. They've said that he has looked good in the adjustment period. Him and Brandon Graham, guys who are natural 4-3 defensive ends, have, I think the biggest thing with transitioning is simply, rushing from a 3-point, is rushing from not having your hand on the ground and really forcing your will, and also all the responsibility that come with it. Like I said with Mario Williams, we talked about a couple months ago. It just depends on what role you want to put Trent Cole in. Is he going to be just a pass rushing linebacker? Is he going to be a guy you're going to ask to do everything, pass, sit back and cover tight ends? It all depends. I think that, he's a guy that's strictly a pass rusher, not a guy who gets a lot of tackles for losses, but a guy that, gets a sack or doesn't get a sack. So I think it depends on what role you put him in.
And we already saw the experiment done in Indy, because obviously they've been a 4-3 team most of their franchise, and they ended up going to 3-4 this past season. Dwight Freeney wasn't as successful, reason why they ended up letting him go. So it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing. I believe Dwight Freeney signed with San Diego.
Yes, he did.
Because they had an injury to
Melvin Ingram.
Yeah, Melvin Ingram. That's what I was thinking of. He was a guy who ended up going a little bit later in the rounds than everyone else thought he was, because he was undersized, but he had a lot of potential. He was athletic. So I like what I see in Philadelphia going forward. I mean, obviously they ended up losing Nnamdi Asomugha to free agency. They ended up letting him go. Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie too. They upgrade a whole bunch there. So I don't know if they can compete with such an interesting division like that one, because you have the New York Giants, and Eli Manning's always capable of taking his team. Back. He's always capable of taking his team to the Super Bowl. You have the Dallas Cowboys. You never know what you're going to get with them. And when they finally get in the postseason, you know they're not going to win. And you have the Washington Redskins with RG3. And coming off of that surgery he had, you don't ever know what's going to happen there. So this could be the year that the Eagles end up surprising a lot of people and making a run to the Super Bowl. You never know. Even though the San Francisco 49ers are a team who have the defense to go back there, but now that Michael Crabtree's gone, you really don't know what to expect with Anquan Boldin being the number one receiver there. Yeah.
With that Crabtree injury, I think it really put a premium on that trade that San Fran made for Anquan Boldin, only getting up a 6th-round pick. Now it's looking like a genius move, because now he moves into the number 1 slot, and it, is Mario Manningham fully recovered from an ACL surgery? It's going to put a premium on the receiver position there in San Fran. Randy Moss obviously probably won't be back next season. He hasn't been signed yet, so I don't think he's going to be signed. And they have a couple young guys out there. I know Austin Collie is working out with them today, trying out. So maybe that's the guy they bring in. So, but it's going to be interesting. That NFC West, man, with Seattle bringing in Percy Harvin, San Fran bringing in Anquan Boldin. I think with the Michael Crabtree injury, I think it puts Seattle at number 1 in the division as of right now. If Crabtree was there, it would be a fight for number 1. But I think that with that Crabtree injury, that's a big loss for him. I mean, he came on slowly, but he's really progressed, throughout his career. Even the last year, I think he had over 70 catches. I think he had 8 or 9 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards. So it was a guy that really was starting to grasp the NFL game and was really starting to step up. And with Anquan Boldin, I thought that he could do even more. But obviously, we don't know how long he'll be out for. But it's a big hole for San Fran. But I think with their defense, they can recover. They should easily make the playoffs, easily.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how good Seattle's going to be this year, too, because Richard Sherman, after that season he's been talking a lot of smack in the offseason with him and Darrelle Revis, obviously, stuff like that. He's going to be a target of teams now, and can he live up to it? It's going to be a big question mark there. Obviously, Arizona improved getting Carson Palmer. They've already had number 1 receiver for a while with Larry Fitzgerald. Don't know what to expect there. I think Atlanta's personally the favorite in that conference. But just another move that was made today. We really didn't get a chance to talk about it yet. E.J. Manuel being signed to that contract, making $9 million. I don't know if it's for 3 years or 4 years, though. I have a feeling it's a 4-year contract. That or 3, I'm not sure. But obviously, it's a little bit more than the 16th pick usually gets. That's from what I saw from reports, at least. I mean, the Bills, they made the move because they understand you have to be athletic in this league, and the ability to scramble and get away from pass rushers is of high value to them. So, good for them.
Yeah, good thing to get him signed early, get him in training camp on time, get him as many reps as possible, because he is in a quarterback battle right now. So, not a problem now. The only issue now is getting Jerry Bird signed.
And Stevie Johnson and his vertebrae.
Yeah, he said he's healthy now. I'm not worried about Stevie Johnson. He's never missed a game. I would like him to be 100% for once. He hasn't been 100% probably in the last 2 seasons.
Well, this is different than just like a strained back, whatever. He has a slight fracture to his L5 vertebrae, whatever that is. You'd like to think that he'd be ready in time for training camp, but you never know how these injuries are going to work out. Could this be a lingering issue throughout the season? We've seen what happened in the past. Obviously, as I mentioned, it's different than a strain. I don't know how he can play through that. I don't know if it's going to require him to get surgery or whatever. Personally, I'd rather, if he needs surgery, he gets it now. So, but if Stevie Johnson's not in this team, how would it affect the team? I mean, you're looking at a lot of inexperienced guys in this team. The possibility of Brad Smith being cut now is probably thrown out the window because, I mean, who's your oldest player if Stevie Johnson's hurt and can't play and Brad Smith isn't here? Probably T.G. Graham.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of inexperience on the team right now. Obviously they're going to be depending on Stevie Johnson a lot. He's the veteran of the group. Obviously, you have I believe 3 rookies and one year guy, and then Brad Smith, who's not really a full-time receiver, as the only other veteran. So Stevie Johnson has to be healthy for the start of the season. If he has to get surgery now, like you said, that's fine, but he has to be ready for week 1.
And the last point I want to bring up before we end our show, I don't know if you heard about this news, but Mike Wallace, apparently, back when he was looking for teams to go to, he actually had a higher offer from the Minnesota Vikings, turned it down to go to Miami. What were your thoughts on that move?
Who's that?
Mike Wallace.
Oh,
he ended up going to Miami over Minnesota.
When you're a receiver, I think that when you look at a team, you look at the money, you look at the quarterback. And I think that, while both areas don't have the greatest quarterbacks, I think that I'm just guessing that, he probably thinks Ryan Tannehill is a better match for him than, in Minnesota with Chris Ponder. Also, Minnesota's obviously a running team with the best running back in the league, and Adrian Peterson, who just ran for over 2,000 yards last season. So they're a team that likes to run the ball and then pass. And in Miami, I think he has more opportunities to excel. Tannehill has a strong arm.
I don't know about that because
I think he has a way better opportunity
with Adrian
Minnesota.
Peterson, you have the play action possibility, and him being a deep field.
You can probably give him the ball though. Does he have the arm to give him the ball?
They also signed Matt Castle though.
He definitely doesn't have the arm to give him. Does he have the arm?
They didn't really have a deep.
I mean, because we've always talked about how Mike Wallace is the one-trick pony, how he goes deep. Can either those two quarterbacks get him the ball rather than Ryan Tannehill, who is a strong, not necessarily a better quarterback, but has a strong arm?
But Matt Castle really didn't have opportunity to do that. And you look over.
Yeah, Dwayne Bowe.
Dwayne Bowe's not really. He's more of a possession receiver though. Than a deep
He's a
threat.
top 10 receiver. He's better than Mike Wallace.
They drafted Jonathan Baldwin, but he's been a bust over there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Greg Jennings. I don't think Greg Jennings had signed with Minnesota yet, but that would have been really intriguing if they had Greg Jennings and Mike Wallace in Minnesota, but obviously it didn't work out that way. He's in Miami now. No taxes there, obviously. They're going to go with Lamar Miller as a starting running back in Miami, and you don't know what you're going to get from your quarterbacks, whether it's going to be Ryan Tannehill or Matt Miller starting at quarterback. So,
yeah.
But that'll wrap up the show, the Sports Reporters Radio Show. I'm the host, AJ Speier, alongside Aubrey Gibert, signing out.